Welcome to another Forte Growth episode where we interview people doing awesome things online. We go over their successes, insights, and any failures to keep you motivated and inspired. Sit back. Let's go.
All right, welcome to the Forte Growth podcast. Today, we had Rand Fishkin on the pod covering a lot of different things, especially around zero-click marketing. I know we actually have Gareth on this podcast too. It's a bit of a three-way pod on this one. Threw Gareth under the bus at the beginning, so if any previous listeners were listening, I was just playing. But Gareth, what did you think?
Fantastic. Rand's a great guy. I've known him for a long time, so it's great to get someone of his sort of stature on the podcast. Really was. And as well as that, I would say it was the perfect timing to get someone like Rand on, where sort of, building a brand. I think it's something now that a lot of people, whether they're running a drop shipping, e-commerce, a content site, whatever it may well be, this covers pretty much everything that you need to really start doing, I would say.
Yeah, no, we cover a lot of stuff, and it mainly centers around social media, I guess. And obviously with what's been happening with Google lately, it's very timely. We talked a lot about, posting where your audience is, gathering attention. You can't just post your links on your social media posts anymore because it's going to get no reach. So kind of strategies around that, different platforms, and just general things around Google and marketing. And honestly, if you're looking to build your brand bigger than just a typical, ad display ad affiliate site, then this would be the perfect podcast for you. But sit back and enjoy. All right. Welcome to the Forte Growth podcast. Today, we actually have the best SEO in the world. Rand, if you actually search best SEO on Google, you're number one. So we're going to label this. Yeah, for real.
What?
Best SEO. If you search best SEO in the world, you're the top left. Yeah.
Man,
so
this is why you can't trust Google, right? This is why the internet is moving away from just relying on Google search, because it's totally unreliable. I haven't been in SEO for 5 years. Google, come on, get with the times.
Well, we have the best SEO in the world according to Google. And we also have Gareth Boyd on the podcast today joining us here. So he found it important enough to come on because Rand's on the podcast. So all your other guests, you probably weren't as important for Gareth to come on, just to let you know.
That's a bit low. No, it's great having Rand on.
I'm just playing. But let's go straight into this. Rand, please give us a background about yourself, what you've been up to, and then we can dive into a little bit what's going on as well.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah. So I am quite well known in SEO circles as the founder of Moz, which was my first company. Dropped out of college in 2001 and started that with my mom, Jillian, first as a consulting business. And then we transitioned to software, raised a bunch of venture capital. I led that company as CEO for a long time, and then stepped down in 2014. Moz kind of struggled a bit in the years that followed. I left the company in 2018 and started a new company, also in marketing software, but a little bit different. This one does audience research. It's called SparkToro. And SparkToro is very different from Moz, raised no venture. We funded it quite differently, have a unique funding model for it where we sort of pay dividends to our investors. And it's a tiny little team. So Moz at its height was 200 plus people. SparkToro is just 3 of us, myself, Casey Henry, my co-founder, and Amanda Natividad, who was actually on parental leave for a little bit. And so our friend Brendan Hufford is interim VP of marketing, filling in for us. So we've got a really sweet little team, and we all get along fantastically well. We have wonderful sort of work-life balance and have built a quite exciting small company. I also wrote a book that's relatively well-known in entrepreneurial and marketing circles called Lost and Founder, a painfully honest field guide to the startup world, which is mostly 18 cautionary tales of things not to do. Yeah. So that's pretty much me.
Nice. Gareth, feel free to jump in with any questions you have as well through this. But you mentioned about SparkToro does audience research. What does that mean for the people listening?
Yeah. So audience research is quite similar to customer research, but generally a little bit broader. So the idea is to gain a deep understanding of the behaviors, demographics, preferences, and for marketers, most importantly, sources of influence for a given audience so that you can go be present in the right places with the right messages at the right time, basically the whole goal of marketing. So whereas SEO actually has a little bit of audience research in it. When you do keyword research, that is technically a form of audience research, right? You're trying to understand which keywords people are entering into Google. It's very difficult to know who is entering them, but your hope is that if you pick the right relevant keywords and you rank for those keywords, that you're, gathering the right audience, and some of those people might become customers. Audience research more broadly is about understanding, what podcast does my audience subscribe and listen to? What YouTube channels are they subscribing to? What publications they read? What events do they go to? What words and phrases they use to describe themselves and the problems that you solve? What other competitors are they checking out in your space? What random affinities might they have, right? Are they, big fans of HBO Max's Harley Quinn cartoon series, which is great, by the way, highly recommend that show. Or are they more into the murder mystery podcasts and, all this kind of stuff to understand, get a deep understanding of your audience so that you can do better marketing to them.
Yeah, I think this segues well actually into a concept that you've started talking about is the zero-click marketing. And I had no clue what this was until Gareth actually told me about it maybe a couple of weeks ago. So this is perfect for me to ask complete naive questions. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience that might fall into the same boat too. But your zero-click marketing, you talked about, obviously, you're doing audience research to find, what your audience is maybe interested in. Obviously allows you to be in front of them and relate to them from your brand perspective and be able to, make creatives, copy, etc. that relates to them. But your zero-click marketing, do you want to maybe dive into what that even means and why that is important for a brand website, niche website, affiliate market, whatever, to potentially use?
Yeah. So James, you probably remember back between about, say, 1995 and 2010, almost all the activity that happened on the internet was followed by a link click, right? And that click, you could go into your analytics, right? Google Analytics or Urchin or whatever you were using during that time period. And you could see everyone who visited your website and how they got to your website. And then, of course, Google did things like keyword not provided, and platforms like Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok, all of them, in the rise over the last 10, 15 years, have essentially locked down the click. In some cases through dark social, which is essentially, we did some research on this. For example, this is a great one. If you go to any TikTok bio, right, which contains a link, many of them contain a link, right, to a website or a link tree or something, right, someone's Instagram, whatever, and you click that link, TikTok intentionally hides the referrer string so that you cannot see that the traffic came from TikTok.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly why. If I were TikTok, I would tell them to pass that referrer data. I think that is super valuable. I think that would tell people, oh, people are using TikTok. I should go do more marketing on TikTok, and it would increase their ad budget and whatever. But for whatever reason, TikTok hides it all. LinkedIn hides a bunch of it. Reddit hides some. Facebook hides some. Facebook Messenger hides all of it. WhatsApp hides all of it. Mastodon hides all of it. So you can't see who sent the traffic. What's even worse and a more pernicious problem for marketers is that almost all of these platforms penalize you for linking out. Yeah. So if you've probably seen some of the tests on Instagram where folks are like, hey, I posted this with a link in bio message, and then I posted it without the link in bio message, and I got 10 times the reach. Oh, I posted this on Facebook, and then I posted it on Facebook without the link, and I got 10 times the engagement. LinkedIn, same story, right? This is why people do put the link in the comments, or they sort of suggest that you go Google them as opposed to putting a link straight in to a social platform. Twitter, Elon, when he bought it, he's destroyed the network. It's nearly valueless, at least to me anymore. But one of the things he did was open source the algorithm, right? And in that open sourcing, you could see that there is a penalty for linking out. If you put a link in your tweet, Twitter will limit the reach of that link, right? This is like just built in, and all the platforms are like this. Hence, zero-click marketing, right? The idea that you can do marketing on these social platforms, in search, in content networks and entertainment networks, but generally it's more like how you would do PR, right? So if you're listening to this podcast right now, there's no link to SparkToro. Like you're hearing an audio version. You might go to Google and type in SparkToro, or you might go to sparktoro.com directly in your browser, but we'd never be able to track where that came from. We have no idea that it came from this conversation that you and I are having right now. And that's the fundamentals of zero-click marketing. It's, we're living in a zero-click world. And so marketers kind of have two choices: pay these platforms to get the link, because paid is the only way to get the link and track it, or accept the fact that this is just how the world works.
So
how should marketers then? Oh, there you go, Gareth.
Sorry, mine's a bit of a lag on it for some reason. But so Rand, do you think that we're going to see, my biggest thing is, do you think we're going to see zero-click marketing being evolved into obviously Google's GSE, the sort of generative search experience?
Yeah, for me, what is generative search if not zero-click everything, right? Zero-click search was the term that I first coined like 4 or 5 years ago when I did some research back then with JumpShot, who subsequently shut down, right? But showing that more than half of all searches on Google end without a click, right? So which as a consumer, right, Gareth, right, James, like it's super handy.
Yeah.
I Google, whatever it is, how old is Tom Cruise? Or, I forgot whatever, Jimmy Carter's, which years was Jimmy Carter president or whatever. And Google just gives me an answer. I don't have to click on anything. It's very convenient. Like it just gives me the information that I need. And it's trained me to do that in all sorts of ways. I often will Google something and get the answer that I need just from the snippet from the website. So I don't have to click. And apparently this is the most common way to use Google now. In 2020, I redid that research with SimilarWeb, who has, a huge 100 million user panel, and 2/3, I think it was like 65.8% of all searches end without a click.
That's crazy.
I mean, we're already there. Generative search is just going to make that problem, if you view it as a problem, worse, right? For businesses and marketers, I think it's really tough. For consumers, it's very handy.
So how should website owners now then, or people who are just running general niche sites, approach social media and other platforms compared to how they approached it before? Because before, as you mentioned, you could post links and you'd be okay. Yeah. I mean, a lot of old pages and stuff have grown huge and are still big from those days, but obviously now it's a lot harder. So how would you recommend someone go about approaching or using these platforms to grow brand following, clicks, anything like that?
I mean, so the good news is that social media has probably never been more powerful in terms of your ability to reach people and an audience. There's almost no human beings left who don't use social media in one form or another on the planet. So that, your potential reach is quite high. The challenge is there's lots of competition, and you have to essentially play to what the platforms want you to do, which is high engagement, native content that keeps people there and is generally non-promotional. And for a lot of marketers, and not even just marketers, I feel like it's the bosses and the executives and leadership who has a real challenge getting their heads around the idea that their marketers should go build audiences by talking about things that their customers and audience care about, and like engaging with people. Yeah, right. Like exactly.
Memes pump.
Memes, or like engaging questions and topics and all this stuff where if you were to look at it, you would say, how am I going to get a sale from that? Right? And so a bunch of CEOs and CMOs look at social media marketing, content marketing, even SEO, and they say, I don't get it. Well, how am I going to get a sale because you did that? And the answer is you're not directly. What you are doing is building up expertise, authority, interest, a following, a community, a group of people who care about what you do and who you are and are familiar with your work, and they want to recommend you, and they're going to be helpful to you in the months and years to come, but you'll never be able to track it.
Yeah.
And for most marketers, they're addicted to attribution.
Yeah. I was going to say, because my father's like an old school business person, and we have a couple of retail shops and a restaurant, and he at times whenever I speak to him, he's kind of a bit more clued in on this situation, because he brought it up a while ago where it seems to be where it's his sort of generation, they're used to newspaper ads. And he kind of relates to it a lot now, where he could not relate at all to Google whatsoever. He would use it every day for buying everything. Whereas he could never get himself into the idea that I could actually advertise on it. But what he does do is he just understands social media, and he's just like, it's just like a newspaper, except, and we've had this nearly, I think, a round circle where we've had the ability to be eyeballs in front of keywords, and there you go. Whereas now we're back to basically newspaper style marketing of, okay, we can segment this audience and they use this platform or they use this particular publication. Now it's time to put our best foot forward to say, this is what we do and come to us. Would I be right in saying?
Yeah. I mean, that's the
basic.
That's the sort of very direct social advertising or content advertising, PR advertising, right? That kind of approach, which absolutely can work, especially if you target a high potential source of influence, right? So if you identify like, hey, here's this publication, it reaches real estate agents in Seattle, and we have a product specifically for real estate agents in Seattle, especially this kind of real estate agent, right? The ones who sell, commercial properties, right? And so the very small, super targeted group, probably not a ton of traffic to that website, but it doesn't matter, because if you get in front of them and you have a message that resolves a pain point that is particularly harsh for them, you're gonna do well, right? And yeah. I think that, your friend who runs the restaurant, yeah, man, like that can work out great. What's more difficult and more convoluted for a lot of folks is, why am I building up an audience organically on social or through content or through PR or through, sources of influence and marketing through sources of influence? Why am I doing that? And how do I do that? That one, I think, because it's a multi-step process where you can't see and track how well it does for you, it's really tough to get into that mindset. And that is like the, sort of new generation of how social media works.
Yeah. I think with the whole new generation of social media too, I think now I guess marketing in general always has been, but attention is the currency now, right? It's about posting anything to have attention. If you have the attention, you can sell to it at some point, but it's just getting the attention and building something to keep that attention on board to eventually do something with it. But
no, that's absolutely correct, right? So like the whole way I think about this, James, is essentially all of the marketing that I do, whether through third-party sources of influence, publications or events or podcasts, or webinars, YouTube channels, social media, whatever it is all designed to bring people eventually back to SparkToro, but probably not on the first time they hear about it, or the second or the third, which is why my goal is essentially like, be present in all the places where my potential audience pays attention. And I say audience instead of customers, because I think there's a really critical distinction. There are, for every one person who might be a right SparkToro customer, there are 1,000 people who are in the audience of the digital marketing world who are probably never going to buy from us. And it wouldn't even make sense for them to buy from us. Like they're not the core user. They don't do audience research on a regular basis. It doesn't matter to them. But they are definitely connected to people and businesses that do need us. And word of mouth marketing is incredibly powerful. If someone is complaining to their friend in digital marketing, like, my boss thinks a lot of our customers are on TikTok, but I don't think they are. I think we should be even investing more in LinkedIn and Reddit. And this person's like, hey, well, have you tried out SparkToro? And then they're like, oh, I've never heard of that. Tell me more. I need those people to go be the market. There's only 3 of us. Like we can't possibly, reach enough folks to do that. And so audience building and marketing to this broad group is how we, sort of spread the word. And I think that is true for millions of businesses now, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously you mentioned TikTok there, and TikTok is always, I guess, a social platform in the news and full of controversy, et cetera, et cetera. But obviously they've done a deal with Google recently, and I'm sure you're also seeing TikTok stuff ranking in the SERPs there as well. What's your take on that Google deal? How do you think it influences, I guess, website operators now? Is TikTok something that should be an essential part of most people's businesses?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm going to come back to the same old thing, right? Like, gain a deep understanding of your audience. It's not just whether someone is on TikTok, right? So, for example, I have a friend in Portland who's an interior designer. She's built a lovely career over the last like 10 years, has a bunch of great clients, does wonderful work. She is on TikTok, but not for interior design stuff. Like, that's not who she follows and what she goes there for, right? She's like everybody else on TikTok. She watches entertaining, yeah, like dance videos and funny animal videos and all that kind of stuff, right? And like some political and social stuff. Like, it is not just about whether your audience is present on a network. It is also about whether they have conversations relevant to the problem that you solve in that place. So, if you say, for example, the classic PR thing is like, we want to get in the Wall Street Journal. Why? Why do you want to be in the Wall Street Journal? Well, it's read by all our customers. I was like, no, it's read by you, the CEO, because you're a CEO type, and CEO types read the Wall Street Journal, and all your buddies read the Wall Street Journal. And so you want to impress all your buddies, right? And that's not how you reach new customers. Look, which is a fine goal. If impress my buddies, make my grandparents proud, like whatever, if that's your PR goal, fine, go for it. Don't let me stop you. Like, go pay your PR firm to pitch the Wall Street Journal. Great. But just don't expect new customers from that, right? You have to go to not the places where they are, but the places where they pay attention to topics relevant to the problem you solve.
So
yeah, nice.
Do you have any examples of, like, from customers that use SparkToro? Do you have any examples of like ones that are, as James would put it, crushing it? And the sort of like getting their content in the right place and driving traffic. And obviously they don't know. Obviously, if they're using the main platforms, they'll have a fair idea, right? Okay, like we know what's coming from these 3 platforms. And just kind of guess which one it is.
Yeah, that's a very niche example, but I kind of love it. So a friend of mine, Charlene Ditch, runs a number of conferences in the sort of marketing and business world, right? So she essentially is a consultant. Her firm, her agency, like, helps other companies put on their events. If you're familiar with Unbounce, she helped them out. Yeah. She ran MozCon for a number of years. She does a bunch of events. She helps out the Search Love folks, all sorts of people. And every time she has an event that needs her to find speakers, she goes to SparkToro and she plugs in the audience that it's trying to reach, right? So she might say, oh, I'm running a conference for whatever, interior designers or chemical engineers. And so she's like, all right, show me what chemical engineers pay attention to. And then she's like, okay, these individuals have lots of followers who are chemical engineers, right? So it's not about, do they have lots of followers and talk about chemical engineering? It's, are the people in this audience, what % of them follow this person? And if that number is high, right? If it's like, 14% of chemical engineers in the UK follow, this particular person on LinkedIn and Twitter when they, and they post primarily about things going on in the chemical industry. That's my keynote speaker, right? That's who I want to invite to the event. And I bring that data back to my client and I'm like, hey, if we bring this speaker, guess what? They have the most hyper-relevant audience to exactly the person that you're, right? And so that event sells well because the speaker is relevant and they bring their audience with them. And often she can find like hidden gems, right? People that wouldn't have been identified, that might be up and comers, that might have a big social and online presence, big web presence, but not a big presence in the, speaking industry yet, and get those folks to the conference. So I love that use case. I think that's really creative. I have another friend who runs a podcast agency, and he essentially helps podcasters get guests in a similar way. We work with one of our customers who we talk to regularly is the New Zealand Board of Trade. And they use us to help a bunch of businesses, often in manufacturing, industrial, trade, shipping, logistics, all those kinds of fields, find their audiences in mostly Canada and the US, and then reach them so that they can help advise their members, right, who are generally businesses in New Zealand or that do business in New Zealand, and like help them find opportunities to go do marketing to the relevant sources and do targeting, do messaging, do content, all those kinds of things. There's a whole bunch of case studies on SparkToro. I don't know. I feel a little weird, like kind of pitching our product.
You shouldn't.
That's what podcasts are for.
Does anybody else get uncomfortable? Right? It's kind of weird to be like, hey, come on our podcast and like, tell us why people should buy SparkToro. No, I don't want to do that. Right. Like I want to talk about the problem, but I don't know. I feel odd selling. I think this is why I'm such a proponent of like reach your audience and then earn their trust. And then like people will check it out if they want it, you know?
Well,
I'm actually looking at the SparkToro. Oh, you go, Gareth. You go, Gareth.
No,
you follow on.
You go. I had the last one. I have a
No,
delay.
to say, I'm looking at the SparkToro page now, and I was just looking at some of the features it has. It looks like, because it gives you hashtags and things like that people use. It looks like someone like a social media influencer or somebody who's not even in, say, West Operator could use the software to help build their social channel, correct? It's almost like some of those other tools
we have a lot of
in that space.
We have a lot of like what I'd say are creators who use the data, especially the free version, right? So we have like a forever free plan. A lot of creators are on the forever free plan and they kind of use it to, hey, every month I'm going to like go figure out who I should like cross promote things with, or hashtags that are newly popular in my field, or topics that people are talking about, those kinds of things. And, you know, SparkToro will give you like the top 5, top 10 results in any given tab for a bunch of that stuff. So can be quite useful.
Nice.
For exactly that purpose. Some folks in content and SEO even use it to like export keyword ideas and then put them into their keyword research tool, which we found to be fascinating, right? Because they kind of have this idea that, I think they're right a lot of the time, that a lot of trends and content topics that start on social become high search volume phrases later. Right. So it's like people have a conversation about this. It's like in the zeitgeist. And then lots of people start searching for it. You know, AI is a great example, right? Last December, suddenly, you know, huge amounts of conversation, and 2 or 3 months later, massive amounts of search volume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
that's
investing
true.
in that really early on.
Like a lot, you know, folks who are whatever at the top of their field, they're always looking for that competitive advantage, right? They want to find like a, you know, and SparkToro is still a very niche product, right? So I think we have 1/20th the number of subscribers that Moz did, and we don't charge as much, right? So Moz was like, when I left, was doing $50 million in revenue a year, and SparkToro is like, you know, is like, you know, smaller than 1/20th of that, right? So very tiny little team. It'd be weird if we were doing $10 million of revenue with 3 people. I'd be like,
that'd be really
hey,
good.
why are you on this podcast? Yeah, why not? Sure.
Nice. I wanted to go see if I can get this a little practical. And this question is going to be dependent, obviously, on someone's audience and things like that. But are there any social platforms that you kind of recommend or you put above others in terms of growing this audience and attention? Obviously, it depends where your audience is, but are there any channels that you're really fond of?
My number one channel for pretty much everyone is email. I still think email is the absolute most valuable channel, network, type of marketing you can invest in, bar none. If you can I use every other channel tactic, even SparkToro's product. Like the whole idea is to drive people to email, because once you have someone's email address and they've opted into saying, yeah, I'm interested in what you do, and here's some information about who I am, the marketing possibilities are endless. And also, you know, if you look at Rival IQ does this great report where they look at average click-through rate and engagement rate for all the major social networks. So, you know, they track like 10,000 Facebook company pages, right? And then they'll say, okay, well, over the last 6 months or the last year, the average engagement was 0.02%. So if you had 1,000 followers on Facebook, on your Facebook page, chances are that 2 of them engaged with each post. You know, that's very depressing, right? Like, but that's just the way it is, right? And you guys probably remember, you know, 10 years ago, that number was like 6%, and we were all complaining about how it had fallen from 8%.
Yeah.
And email is the one exception to that rule. Open rates for email and click-through rates for email haven't budged in 25 years. They have stayed pretty consistently between 20 and 25%. So, around 20 to 25% of an average email list will open an email and engage with it. And an average of 20 to 25% who see that email will click through on a link to, whatever the call to action or the website is. As far as I'm concerned, that's phenomenal, right? That's what everyone should be investing in. And it's always surprising to me how few, especially creators, I feel bad for a lot of these folks, right? Who've built up, 500,000 people on TikTok. And it's like, yeah, but then, if you're not posting every day and your channel isn't like the high engagement channel, TikTok won't even show your videos to your followers. Like a follow on TikTok is nearly useless because of how that platform works, right? It's not just a feed of who you follow. It's like a learning algorithm of showing you entertaining stuff. And so I'm like, man, I would take one email address over 10,000 more TikTok followers.
That's
literally.
what James wants to hear.
I mean, it depends what your goal is, right? If you want to be TikTok famous and impress your friends, sure, right? Like go buy your 10,000 followers, whatever. There's plenty of spams. I think you can go on Fiverr and like for $10, someone will sell you 1,000 TikTok followers. But if what you're actually looking for is, hey, I'd like to be able to turn this into a business. I want to make revenue. I want people to subscribe to my Patreon or come check out my website, buy my product. Email.
If we were to exclude email, do you have a platform that you would favor?
Let's see, I'd say in many niches, the answer, especially many B2B niches and a growing number, the answer is LinkedIn. And, it feels like this boring old school, like business work network, but engagement rates there are very high if you produce the right kind of content. A lot of people are on there all day, every day. Many people have who were sort of bigger on Twitter, have started moving all their activity to LinkedIn. For example, I noticed the digital marketing universe has largely moved away from Twitter and over to LinkedIn over the last year and a half. I think that's mostly Elon, but that's not alone, right? This is not the most valuable network, but it is a shockingly valuable network for the right people. Both Geraldine, my wife, who's an author, and I get a lot of value from Mastodon. I get as many engagements, posts, clicks, all that kind of stuff on Mastodon with 3,000 or 4,000 followers as I do on Twitter with 450,000 followers.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, that's just because everyone who's on Mastodon is actually on there, right? So you're like, oh, but there's only 10 million users on Mastodon and Twitter has 300 million. It's like, yeah, but the 10 million who use Mastodon are on there every day. And the 300 million who use Twitter log in like once a month when some celebrity has some fight about, whatever, should trans people be allowed to play sports with Elon, right? Like that. Twitter has just become essentially a sort of social and political fighting network and like a clickbait, engagement bait network. Whereas Mastodon, Blue Sky is like this in some niches. Threads is like this in some niches. I've been seeing more activity with Threads, especially after, when Elon announced that he was going to charge everybody $2 a month to use Twitter. So you couldn't even log in if you didn't pay him. Threads like grew dramatically over the next week again, even after their big boost. So, I see some value in those networks. I suspect 4 or 5 years from now, one of those is going to win out. I know Threads has talked about, Meta's said that Threads is going to federate with the Fediverse. So it'll be integrated with Mastodon and you can follow people from both those platforms together. That could be very interesting, right? That might really help make essentially the broader Fediverse like a great network to join. I would say, in some niches, especially retail e-commerce, Reddit can be huge because what you're seeing now is this trend of people appending Reddit to their Google searches. I do this myself. I was looking for a new men's conditioner, right? Like, got it. Keeping this hair in shape is like a challenge, gentlemen. And, so I'm like, okay, well, I want a new conditioner. Like, I'm trying to find something different. And I searched for not best men's conditioner, Reddit. And that trend over the last 6 years has been absolutely huge, of people appending Reddit to all kinds of commercial-based searches, e-commerce-based searches. And so if you're in e-commerce and your community can go start threads, put in good words for you, comment, engage with, reply to, build a brand on Reddit, I think that's actually quite valuable. And so too is some Reddit advertising. I can't remember who it was. I think might have been HBO Max or Hulu was talking about how their Reddit advertising was some of their most successful digital ads.
Okay. And if I was a gambling man then, would it be worth trying to grow something on Mastodon or Threads in lieu of what potentially may happen in the future? Would that be something, if someone was looking to find something potentially to be early on, that would be something to potentially try to do?
Again, I know this answer is, I'm like a broken record, but it depends on your audience, right?
Yeah.
Like if you are, you're selling a new mass market toothpaste, no, don't go to Mastodon. Like, that's not going to help you. It really won't. But if you are providing a new privacy-based web browser, yeah, man, start on Mastodon. That community is huge there. That is exactly where they all gather and care about that stuff. There's a surprisingly great community of folks in the sort of comics and fantasy sci-fi writing world on Mastodon. Fantastic. Like, I would absolutely build a profile. Neil Gaiman is like hugely popular on Mastodon. He's one of the most followed accounts there. There's a big community around him. When he moved his Twitter activity over to Mastodon, like tons of people just followed, right? George Takei is another one. So if you can ID, this audience research is so valuable because it's so problematic to ask which network should I be on, or what type of marketing should I engage in, or what's going to work to reach my customers. Giving a universal answer to that is a sign, frankly, in my opinion, that you're a bad marketer, right? Like you've been given a hammer, and so you think every problem's a nail. And you just hit it, you whack it with your SEO stick or your YouTube ad stick or your Instagram stick. And that's just not how the world is. Like we have a very diverse online ecosystem, and folks, you got to find where your audience has the relevant participation, not rely on, well, Rand said that Mastodon was good, I'm going to go check that out. Like, don't take that away from this conversation. I love it. I think it's great for my stuff, but your mileage may vary.
So to bring this back a bit, because there's a lot of our audience that are still in the mindset of the sort of, Rand, you'll relate with me whenever I say it, because we met each other, I don't know, 2008, 2009. Barry Adams, my brother, your wife, Geraldine, and yourself, we went to Nick's warehouse, I think it was, in Belfast after, I don't even know what you're...
that's right.
I don't even know what you were doing in Belfast, but we met up anyway.
I was trying to make friends with Barry because he'd been so mean to me on the internet for years. And I was like, well, yeah, let's see if I can't win this guy over. And now we're buddies, He came to Seattle and we hung out.
We used to meet up every so often in Belfast. Andrew and Barry and myself, we used to go for a beer, and he can drink some amount of beers. He puts me to shame. But he's a great guy.
There was a time.
But back to my...
I'm not that person too, and I'm done.
My question is, because you'll relate to this, where back in that time, it was a time where you just built a website and I'm going to create content to rank. And there's still this mini community came out of nowhere, as you probably know, largely in part because of COVID. And they're sitting at home thinking, right, I want to make some money, but at the same stage, I don't want to put my face to it, and I can rank on Google. Now there's a predicament now where there's been this recent update, as you probably know, the helpful content update. And they're just like you
I
said,
heard from some friends about it.
yeah. So Reddit is now appearing higher than them, and they're all worried. Like it is, and like, and quite rightly so, because at the same stage, you just half the time the content is really bad. It's garbage, really, really, really bad stuff. So what would you advise to this particular niche? So basically the niche website world, where they're basically creating a website and they have a ton of just purely informational or best this for that, best conditioner, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're in this predicament where they don't know anything else, because the past 3 years they have been basically building these sites to rank. Now they're having to change completely to build a brand. So I have a question for you on building a brand, and ultimately, what do you think the first steps they should be doing to change from what they have been doing? Because it's totally different in comparison to just trying to rank on Google.
Yeah. Well, we've been through this cycle so many times, right, Gareth? Like, you remember the made for AdSense sites of the early 2000s, and then the sort of like, junky scrape and repurpose sites of the mid 2000s, and then the, hey, anybody can create a blog. And if you just create a blog with an RSS feed and you use the right keywords in your title and you build up like some comments, like boom, you can get to the top of Google in 2009, 10, 11. And then Google devalues this stuff. And the only people who have consistently won are those who have built brand names that a majority of web consumers recognize. And not even all of them, right? So I think that very frankly, playing the Google game, playing the Facebook game, playing the Instagram game, playing the YouTube game, eventually you're going to lose. Like, all of these platforms are not in it to provide you with an income. They are not there to make you rich and famous. They're not there to drive business to you. They are there to serve their shareholders' interests. And I mean, I hate to do this, but I'm going to come back to email. Build a group of people, fans who care about what you do, because what you do is so unique to them, and they care about your insight, your brand. It doesn't have to be you personally, right? It can be the brand that you're creating. But, I think about this in the travel space where, Rick Steves doesn't care how well Google ranks him or not. He doesn't care whether YouTube videos get watched by him. He doesn't care if, Instagram changes their algorithm and none of his posts get any engagement, because he has an email list of 1.5 million people who pay attention to Rick Steves because they have followed the Rick Steves brand for forever. And very frankly, that is, I think, the only safe way to long-term build a brand. And so using all of these platforms, using Google to get some search traffic, using Reddit to drive some, brand awareness, using YouTube to get your videos in there, to get people watching and paying attention to you. Absolutely. Do all those things, but always with a mind to driving them back to your website where they can sign up for your email list, and make that subscription more valuable than anything else, right? Make it that this also has to change fundamentally a lot of people's information products. If your whole goal is, I just want to be the website that people, when they Google this, I rank highly, and then they come and they get the list of best conditioners. Sorry, man. Like, it's not it. That is not a fundamentally workable long-term solution to building a great brand and business, because it is a one-time exchange of information that people can get in lots of other places. Why should they trust you? You've gotta be Consumer Reports or, Wirecutter or CNET, right? One of these places where you trust them because you like them, right? You trust their editorial decisions. You've subscribed to them for a long time. When I look for video game reviews, a lot of the time I still go to Kotaku, because I remember them from 12 years ago when they gave the best video game reviews out there. And like, that's the team I trust. And, I've tweeted back and forth over the years with a few of the editors there, and like, their reviews are just good, right? When they say something's really good, it usually is really good. And so I follow them for information about that, rather than just Googling whatever best action RPGs 2023. That I think the SEO information play is a losing proposition as a strategic choice. Tactically, you can still use it, but it's not a strategy.
So you're saying SEO is going to die?
That was a lot of rain. A lot of rain to throw on that parade. Sorry.
No, I think that's perfect, because I think James is very good with email marketing. He's well ahead of me. Like we've got an email list with Affinity.com, and it's, I don't know, 50, 60,000 or something.
This will make you cry, Rand. This will make you cry how many email subscribers Gareth has and doesn't email. He doesn't email them.
I know.
Like tens of thousands.
Yeah. So we've got an email list of 50, 60,000, and it's to do with finance, and we just don't do anything with it. We're really bad. We're just very bad. What do you recommend we do, Rand?
I mean, I think if you've got that list, you have to start from the product perspective, right? You can't be like, oh, this is a valuable list. How do I take advantage of it? You have to instead think, why did these people sign up for this? What do they do? What problems do they regularly have that are painful to them, where if someone provided them with this in their inbox, they would engage with it. So like they would open that email. If that subject line came through, these 10 subject lines all around this topic came through, why would they open it? Why would they click through? Why would they be like, wow, this is one of the best emails that I get. I'm forwarding this to all my finance buddies. I think you have to have that answer before you craft any kind of email tactics, or, how many times should you email them? When should you email them? What should you make that list look like? How do you clean the list? Which all of those are good questions to ask too, but fundamentally it starts with product.
Yeah. It's on my to-do list.
Ever-growing.
I mean, this
ever-growing.
is the hard thing about, the hard thing about being an entrepreneur sometimes is you're like, man, I have a lot of resources and I have a lot of expertise, and I know I could do this thing. I probably should do this thing, but also focus is a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, I know this is also going to sound like crazy advice, but if that's not the product you want to build, and not the niche you want to be in long-term, and not the brand that you want to spend all your time and energy on, you might just throw it away. You might just be like, you know what? I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something else. Doesn't matter that I have these 60,000 emails. I'm just taking that off my mental plate, because what I really want to do is this other thing. Great. Because there's not just nothing wrong with that. That's actually even better advice than here's what you should do in the finance niche for an email newsletter.
Yeah. It literally is on my to-do list to do something with. James has always been saying to me about doing something, but I'll need to have a frank conversation with my brother, Andrew.
You just have to come back over to Texas.
If I can be helpful, feel free to drop me a line. Happy to, drop in whatever connections or network I've got that might be valuable to you.
Thank you, Rand.
But before I actually jump into my next question, Rand, I think a good for anyone listening, if in terms of brand, if anyone searches Garage Gym Reviews in Google and just let it auto-complete, and you'll see all the modifiers that this brand has, basically, that people are searching for gym equipment and fitness equipment plus their brand all over the place. And there's a reason they're doing so well to all the different updates. I mean, they built a brand starting from YouTube many years ago and eventually turned it into a website. And that is just, I mean, people aren't searching best X for Y. They're searching Garage Gym Reviews dumbbells, for example.
Yeah, I think there's another website.
James, that is a fantastic
Expert Reviews. Have you heard of them?
Another website?
Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah, I'm familiar with those people. I think this is actually a great framing for the whole, what product should I build? How do I build a brand? If you have a fantastic answer to the question, why are millions of people or thousands of people going to append my brand name to a search in this sector rather than searching for the generic? You probably have a great idea for a product and a brand and a company, right? So if instead of searching for, whatever it is, best chef knives, they're like, oh, I'm going to search for Rand's best chef knives. Because why? Because you really like and trust my advice because I'm the go-to in the culinary tech industry because I invented a new kind of knife because, whatever it is, right? Like you gotta have that answer. And this is very true. Like if you see what the search volume looks like in any niche, you will often see that brand names are more searched for than all the generic keywords combined. And when that's the case, that means someone already won the market.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's not directly about Google, but it's just more or less to kind of in terms of building a brand, like to get it across to people in terms of how important it is. My brother had mentioned to me like a month ago, he was like, it'd be really interesting to know, not that anyone does, but these brands who are on YouTube for such a long period of time, like expert reviews, because I'm seeing them in this update in certain sites that I have, and they're ranking so well. And I looked at it, I was like, look, where'd these guys come from? But you go onto their YouTube channel and they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. They have tons of likes, subscribers, and it just happens to be Google owns it or not. Well, Google owns YouTube, but, so they surely with obviously that data on their, that data field, that they could obviously use that to figure out that, okay, these guys are actually an authority other than just, using the standalone top 3 ranking facts.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a fairly obvious, well-known fact of how Google functions, right? Is that it looks at engagement and discussion and followings and, all this kind of stuff across the board. I'm trying to remember, I think if I'm not mistaken, there was some announcement related to the Department of Justice trial here in the United States where one of the Google engineers had essentially revealed in not exactly these words that Google does indeed use behavioral data. Which brands do consumers prefer? Which brands do searchers prefer? What do they click on? What do they click the back button on? What do they engage with across platforms that aren't just the search results, YouTube being an obvious one? But this is why Google did a big data partnership with Twitter. This is why they did a big data partnership with TikTok. This is why they were frustrated they couldn't do one with Facebook, right? And all of that stuff is feeding into how Google thinks about whatever expertise and authority in a space, right? That is like the core of this brand, this person, this channel, this website is connected to our signals, our ranking signals around what is popular and what therefore should appear, right? Because if Google wants to delight searchers, they know that they need to present searchers with brands that those searchers already know. The age when searchers liked finding new things through Google that they'd never heard of, mostly gone.
So
to see satisfying search results, you as a searcher, an average searcher, obviously there are people who are different, but I'm saying an average searcher wants to see the brands they've already heard of, the ones they know, like, and trust in the space.
So with that being said, because I remember years ago whenever you used to do Whiteboard Fridays with Moz, and you'd mentioned you're probably ahead of your time whenever you were mentioning the sort of like user experience will come to Google in the sense of what it is now in terms of AI. Because with their new, I think it's a classifier or something like that anyway, that's baked into this helpful content update, and they can basically use this to scrape across the whole the web to figure out, who's clicking back, where are you at on Twitter. So if because I know there's some in particular, I'll not say who it is, but he's in finance and he has a huge following, but it's his personal name. It's not his own brand, but for his website clicks on his profile is just huge on Twitter. He gets, I don't know, thousands of clicks in it every single month. And he was saying to us that there has to be some form of way that they're tracking it to gauge that. So back to that. So your user experience from everything off your brand overall, every single social media platform, it's imperative, I would say, and what you're saying to build that out. So how, for the small person, like how do you recommend them actually, doing all this? Because it's such a big undertaking. It's not like a lot of people now.
I don't, no way. yeah, don't try and do all these things. That's a recipe for disaster. Remember, the focus is a superpower. Is there one or two channels that you're really good at? Like, oh man, I'm an incredible writer. Oh my God, like I'm so good at Instagram. I'm so good at LinkedIn. I'm so good at whatever, YouTube videos. I'm great at speaking on stages. Like, great, fine. Focus your energy on event marketing if you're great on stage. Don't get bothered and bogged down and like, I have to do all the million things. Unless you're a big brand or a brand that's raised venture capital, God forbid, you don't have to, right? Like you don't have to. You want to build a small, profitable niche business? Fantastic. I love that. That's what capitalism needs more of. It needs less, big winners and more small and medium businesses. Go fight that good fight by doing the one or two things that you are really good at. And that tends to be areas where you have passion and interest, which also makes your job a lot more fun, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what sucks, right? What sucks as a marketer or a content creator is being told, hey, I need you to go create this kind of content that you hate, right? On this platform that you don't like, in this way that doesn't work for the way your brain works. That sucks. That's the way to live. Don't do that, right? Like go invest in the platforms that you like and are passionate about, where you're good at things. Choose two. That's it. Start there. That's my recommendation, especially for small and medium businesses.
Nice. And just to be mindful of your time, Rand, one last question for
yeah.
you. And we talked about zero-click marketing. Obviously, 67% of people on Google don't click any of the links there. And obviously now they're ranking things like Reddit and things, maybe they don't have ads on there. Do you think it's a potential threat to Google's business model, having less people visiting sites that have display ads and things like that? No?
No. Okay, so right, Google benefits in three ways here. So what Google has found, the reason that they allowed zero-click searches to become such a huge thing is not because they were trying to like make it a better experience for users. No. What they found is that people would Google all the simple, basic stuff, and then they would come back to Google more and more frequently. They would essentially deepen their Google addiction because Google gave them instant answers to their questions. And Google found that speed of answer was more effective than accuracy, comprehensiveness, whatever, visual beauty, diversity, like none of those things comparatively mattered versus the same UI UX all the time that always shows me the answer that I want. And so they found that Google addiction deepening, and therefore they were like, this is fantastic for our business, because even though we will technically lose money on some searches because people aren't clicking the paid links, we will get more searches overall. And those more searches will lead to more total clicks in the aggregate. And, the other thing that they can do is maintain their monopoly power, right? So by maintaining that monopoly power in search, they can use their, this is obviously illegal by US antitrust law, but we'll see how this DOJ case shakes out. But essentially they can use their power in one sector to enter other sectors. Did you know before July 13th, 2014, YouTube was only about 20% of all Google video results? But then on July 14th, I might be getting the days wrong, but it was one day in July, YouTube was suddenly 95% of all Google video results, because Google engineers just flipped the switch that said, you know what, our property is going to be the only one where video is ranking in Google. So these guys, they're going to find a way to monetize all of this. I see no threat at all. I think the generative AI thing, they're going to find ways to, would you like your brand name to be in this generative AI answer? We can suggest your brand name at the bottom if you pay us
$5 a month.
I mean, $5 a click.
Yeah, that's brutal. But Gareth, do you have anything to ask before we finish off? Or
yeah, I think like because like you've been so successful, like regardless to Moz and everything, but what do you have any? Because you're still
you've been so successful regardless of Moz, Gareth. I'm putting that on my wall behind me.
Dude. But what side hustles do you have?
I mean, I know I I talk about focus. It's very important to me, but I am actually running another company right now. So I have kind of two CEO gigs. One is SparkToro, just wonderful little company, and I love what we're doing. But I also had this passion that I always wanted to do ever since I was a little kid, and that is to make video games. And so I am the creative director and CEO of a very small, there's only 4 of us right now. We're recruiting for an artist for our 5th little game studio. And we're working on developing our first video game. It's been in development for a little while. We've got a prototype and sort of all the concepts done. Nice. You can play the game in sort of the Unity engine. And it's been a very fun, big learning experience, right? I obviously manage lots of software engineers in my life, but not in the games world. And so this is a fascinating creative process. But I hope to have something to announce in maybe 6 to 9 months.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Nice.
No,
Awesome.
It's also really interesting from a marketing perspective, right? Because video game marketing is completely unlike B2B software marketing, as you can imagine. And product is so much of it compared to, a lot of other sectors where it's very marketing heavy.
Where can people find you, Rand?
So lovely spending time with you. Folks can find me at SparkToro.com, where you can set up a forever free account. There's no free trial, just forever free account. And if you want to follow me in my weird adventures in all sorts of marketing universes, I am most active on Mastodon and LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Just search for Rand Fishkin, you'll find me.
Thanks very much for your time,
Perfect. And we'll link this up in the description. Cheers for coming
Yeah,
on.
my pleasure, gentlemen. Great to catch up and see you, Gareth, and great to spend some time with you, James.
Cheers for coming on.